So we're going to recap. You went over your study, got a book coming out. Really want to touch on that. Um, went over your first, second, and third. Your third one was amazing,
Uh,
and for me listening to it, what's the one thing you learned that night? The one you took from the third account.
humility. I learned to be humble in every way that I approach this subject. And that's what I advise a lot of people to do. Um, because there are people that ask questions. I mean, and over the course of 20 years, I've heard some of the same questions hundreds and hundreds of times. Why aren't there clear pictures? Why don't we have a body? Why can't we do this? Why can't you do that? And it's the same thing over and over again. And I have to tell people, look, the first thing you really need to do is stop giving yourself so much credit about what you know about this,
Exactly.
because just learning about the phenomenon itself is humbling. You don't the things that you assume that you know and things that you think you know that make sense to you won't make sense to you. They won't. And to be honest, I had a guy tell me, he said, "You're expecting me to believe what you're telling me," and I had to tell him, "No, I don't. I don't expect you to believe me. You're going to do what you're going to do. All I'm telling you is my findings. That's it. You want to try and explain them away, you want to do anything, or do you want to actually take the work that I've done, review it, and then try to generate some of your own data and see how it compares?" And I've challenged people. I mean, this study that I did um, was very revealing in a lot of ways, not just in the data that I presented. Um, I looked at it and I thought, okay, this is really out of nowhere for most people because they don't think about this kind of stuff when it comes to the phenomenon. And I said to myself, there's all kinds of people out there that are just going to roast this because you've seen it. Somebody comes out with an assertion or an idea or a question or something like that, and there's people that just destroy it. They will attack it and knock it down. So I released the study. I believe it was on 17 different Facebook groups within the span of about 20 minutes. I posted them all, and I just sat there and I put my hands on the desk. And I said, "Okay, here it comes." And what I got was crickets. Most people didn't even have the wherewithal to get through the study, and you've seen it. There's a lot of detail, a lot of data in it. Um, so the folks that did read it, there some of the reactions were like, "Wow, that's really something." And there were a few
But
people
no,
that think, hmm,
but no engaging conversation.
zero.
That
No,
itself is a study of people.
yep, nobody could touch it because it wasn't a story. It wasn't, some wild accusation. It was actual data. And I realized there's so little real data that's generated in this field, and it's because the scientific method and scientific methodologies aren't used. They're there's a start to them, and there's everything that somebody wants to do that kind of stuff, but then they stray off of it. And the thing that I did with this one is I worked really hard to stay within a disciplined approach that was following the scientific method, going through this the best I could, the best I knew how. And I'm by no means am I a scientist. When I had my first encounter, I was more interested in astronomy than anything else. I loved looking at the stars, looking through telescopes and stuff like that. Then I had to learn all kinds of different disciplines. Zoology. I had to learn biology. I had to learn anthropology. I had to learn how bodies move, and what how it's all put together. And that's part of the research that I do as well. It's not just research on the subject; it's research on the information that supports the subject. And that's what we need more and more of, I think, in this field, are people that are going to take just one facet of this field and study it the way a scientist would. And my particular thing was I worked 12 years in the mental behavioral health field. So I have a natural connection, natural background to be able to deal with these, these traumatic after effects that people are going with. And in the course of doing this, what I've found is I can actually kind of reverse engineer situations and get a good idea of why these situations happened based on the way the witness reacts to what they report the creature does and what the situation is. And there's a chapter in my upcoming book where I describe one of those situations where a woman was being traumatized by contact with these creatures, and how I was able to help her find more of a medium to where they stopped messing with her and they got boundaries set and they were able to just through simple symbolic communications and be able to do work with it that way. And that's still that's another part of this research that I'm going to have to get into a little bit more and see if there's any consistency that I can get to help folks out. But that's what happens when you do this, when you focus on one facet of something and you gain a very detailed knowledge of it. You can get to the point where then, okay, let's see how this applies and let's see what feeds into it, and it may turn into something totally different at some point. I may the information and knowledge that I've been able to gather now may be just an opening, a door opening to something else as part of this phenomenon. And I think we need more and more of that. We need, I've talked to people, and I talked to one fellow about that, and he said, you know what, I got a lot of stick structures in the area that I go to. So he said, I'm going to start really looking hard at stick structures and really focus on that. And I was like, that's great, because that's a big subject within the research community. There's another fellow who has had intermittent contact with a group. He thinks it's a group that's out there, and he can hear them, and he's starting to really try to get into how they communicate, what those means of communications are, and he's going to try and study that. And I welcome anybody to do it. My inspiration, and there's people that have a problem with him, but my inspiration is Dr. Jeff Meldrum. I think a lot of people know him and respect him as one of just about the only mainstream scientist that contributes to this field at all. And it was him saying that we need citizen scientists to take over and really be the ones that are the point on all this. And if you look at the way scientists operate, they do that. They specialize. Somebody just doesn't study zebras. There are people that study the mating habits of zebras. There are people that study the feces, the scat of zebras. There are people that study the hooves of zebras. And you really have to break it down and really look at, what your, number one, what your passion is. And number two, can I really look at this subject and really get into it and become, somebody who's really learned on this particular point. And that's really what I'm doing, with my research. And the thing is, what I've done now is starting to lead me in other directions and other things. And I'm at the point now where I'm actually developing actual scientific theory, actual hypothesis. It's following it all through and coming up with these with an actual scientific theory. And the word theory is used a lot in this field, but when somebody in this field says theory, they really mean idea. In science, the word theory means something completely different than it does in a courtroom. And a scientific theory is a school of thought. It's a school of study. It's a particular subject that you're really trying to work in there. And then there's a hypothesis formed, and there's experimentation done. There's data generated and analyzed and cataloged. And that's what a theory in science is. And I think we need more and more of that, because the fact that I put this study out there, and here we are almost 5 years later, it's unchallenged to this point. No one that's seen it has been able to look at me and say, no, this isn't real. No, this isn't true. In fact, what it's what's done for me to be able to do is look at people and say, here's 148 people that had an experience that you say shouldn't happen, yet they're having an exact same reaction to it as if they were in a traumatic car accident, as if they witnessed a very violent act, as if they were dealing with chronic abuse. The things that we know that people react to a certain way, they're reacting this way to what they report. So it's not, I'm not gonna, I can't sit here and say that that validates, Bigfoot is real or whatever, or Dogman or whoever else, but I can say um, this is something that we should look a little bit closer at, because in the minds of these people, these things are very, very real, and we need to, you know, uh, we need to respect that a little bit more with our attention and some very sober and very humble research into it.
I, on my show or in my little circle, I try to connect like-minded people. And I have a friend here in North Carolina named Matt Hooper, and he's a vocal guy. That is his thing. And I would think he's someone that you would really enjoy connecting with because he focuses on the vocals, and to the point where he can just pretty much, when he's going through looking at the vocals, he's like, okay, I know what this pitch is at this can't be this, and he just goes. And I think that would be a really, really good person for you to connect to. If you would like, I'll make sure you get his information after the show.
I'm
Um,
very happy to learn anything new. I'm a, when it comes to this field, I'm a sponge for for any data that I can get my hands on. That'd be great.
and I am guilty because I know they exist. I know they exist, so I don't try to prove their existence. I go, and maybe this is, from a law enforcement background. And let me say this, being prior law enforcement does not give me credibility because I've met liars in that field too. Um, I go for the experience and the anticipation of being able to track something or find something or gain the respect of something to have the experience again. And so I can't really call myself a researcher. I'm out there because I want the experience again, because I am fascinated by what lives out there, how they live, how they survive. But the biggest part of me is just to have that glimpse again, or just to have, that it's like I need to feed my curiosity. Do you mind, not to get off subject, but do you mind if we go ahead and get to your fourth encounter? Because I really want to go into the UFOs. I really want to go into your book, and you've done so much more. So, do you mind if we go into your fourth?
Not at all. Not at all. Don't mind at all. Okay.
Well, we'll see.
So
Let's go.
yeah. This is the summer of 2019. I was invited for, you see, my first speaking engagement. What happened very oddly. There's a backstory to this particular incident. But my first speaking engagement came at the first ever Marionette and Menominee Bigfoot Convention. Right at the border of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Wisconsin, right there. Marinette, Wisconsin, Menominee County, Michigan. And the way I got connected with that was, again, cruising through social media, looking for information, and I saw an advertisement for a Bigfoot convention. And I didn't recognize where it was. It didn't give an actual location to where it was. It just gave a phone number. And so, if it's near me, I'd like to go. And, so I just called the phone. You call the phone number, and a fellow picks up, and he introduces himself as his name is Craig Sulk. And I start talking with him. He asked me about, where I was. He said, well, how long you been, you've been a researcher? I said, well, 11 years now. He goes, oh, really? And it turns out that was his home phone number. And he was trying to put together this, this convention for the following year. And I was, okay, we started talking, and we didn't realize that we were on the phone for almost 4 hours, because you get two people and, together who in an environment where they can talk freely. And we started talking and talking and talking. And I came to find out he was actually on I believe it was the second season of Finding Bigfoot. They came to his property there in Menominee, Michigan, and it was the one. It was the one that they call it the Super Upers. I think it's the UP. They call the Upper Peninsula the UP. And people can go back and look at it. And Craig's was an incredible guy. Just a mind that was so open, so he was always active, thinking about this, always coming up with different ideas and talking and things like that. And so we talked for a while, and I realized, yeah, that's a convention I can't go to because it was 1,200 miles away or something. And we ended up talking to each other about every 2 weeks or so, and every conversation was 3 or 4 hours long. And that started in late 2016, and then it went into early 2017. And then he called me one day and he said, look, would you come up here and be a speaker at this convention? And up until that point, I had never thought about public speaking or going to do anything like that. My research was just for me. That's what I was doing. I wanted to know more and learn more. I mean, all I was thinking about was finding out what happened to me. What have I experienced here? And so I had to sit there and think about it, and I had to talk to my wife at the time. I said, would this be cool? I mean, this is February of 2017, and
I love it. I love it.
yeah. This is February 2017. I said, can I actually do this? Is this okay? And she said, yeah, do it, because from the first time that I had my first encounter, I had my first encounter before I met her, and she and I got married before I actually realized what that first encounter was. And in all of our time together, she never told me whether she believed in Bigfoot or not. The only thing that she realized was the impact that it had on me. She could see that, she could understand that. And so she reserved anything she had to say about it with, for some reason she never brought it up, but she always supported me, never stood in my way of pursuing it. And this is a lady who, when we moved here to New Mexico in 2009, went to work for the U.S. Forest Service. And she was working at the executive level of the Forest Service. So she was tight-lipped about it before she ever went to work for the Forest Service. And I, gave me access to people, and I talked to people about it, and they all said the same thing. We can't, we're not going to comment on something that's undocumented. We can't give you any information on that. That's fine. But so yeah, I got to, so made the arrangements, and I went up there, and coming off of the plane, they picked me up, and Craig says to me, by the way, you're the keynote speaker. What? And that's the kind of guy Craig, that Craig was. He's just, he's just a happy-go-lucky guy, really fun guy to be around. And he and I hit it off really well. We became good friends. And so, having done that in 2017, in 2019, they called me back and they said, hey, they know I'm working on this because I was just really doing the first working on that study. And 2019, because I keep in touch with him, I said, yeah, I'm about done with this thing, about ready to publish it. He said, well, do you want to come up here and release it? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to come back, because I had spoken at some other conventions and other conferences before, ever since between the two. I said, yeah, it'd be a great thing to do. And so go back up there in 2019, and I do my thing, and I release my study, and it's all over the internet, and people are picking up their phones and looking at my study, and it was really cool. And meanwhile, there's these other panel members who are sitting there with books to sell and see DVDs and all this other stuff, and I'm just sitting at a table like, anybody want to talk to me or what? One of those things. I'm just totally unprepared for that. Hadn't really thought about it. And so the arrangement was they if I got up there, they would take care of everything for me. Once I got up there, I'd travel, and they would take care of me. So they put a camper in their driveway on their property. And there's 80 acres up there that they have. And
wow.
Yeah, there's all kinds of Bigfoot activity on that property. And, to the point, his entry on Finding Bigfoot, the reason they came up there and looked at his property was that he got one of the best trail cam pictures that I've seen of a Bigfoot, and you can look it up. I mean, it's clear as day. He's got 3 shots. One, I mean, from a trail cam this trail cam was at a salt lick they put out for deer. And the reason he has that out there is because they hunt on his property all the time. They hunt deer, they hunt bear, and the deer attract bears and everything like that. So they try to draw the deer in. And he has a had an array of trail cams that were all over his property. I believe at one point he told me there were 6 miles worth of hunting lanes that they had laid out on his property. And
Wow.
he's got this one trail cam that he had. There's one picture. There's a deer standing there, and the background's nice and clear. The next picture, the background, there's a big shape, big humanoid shape peeking around this tree behind it. Easy to see. And then the third picture, that thing's not there anymore. The deers, all of them. That's what changed. That's what got
Wow.
Finding Bigfoot up there, and that's how he became known. And he opened an educational type of display on his property right near where this happened, and he would bring people in there. He called it the Haydn Adventure, and because Bigfoot is Haydn, that was his sense of humor, And he got up there. So yeah, I get to go up there, and I'm in this camper in 2019, and I had just done the conference that day, and big excitement. Everything, got to bed later, and it was somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning. I hear this thump sound, and it sounded like it was against the side of the camper. And I don't recall any vibration or anything, but there was a definite noise that woke me up. And the way these campers are, that the bed's always in the back. And so, and of course, I'm 6'2", so the bed is only 6 feet long. So I'm sleeping catty corner on the bed. My head is basically in the corner, the back corner of the camper. And I heard this thump, and I realized, what was that? And woke me up. And I sat there, and I was like, oh, what is that? About 30 seconds later, I hear this noise. And I have no idea what this noise. I mean, I just woke up. It's just baffling me. 4 or 5 seconds it goes, and then it's off. And a few seconds later, it starts again. And it goes. And I'm thinking, what is that noise? And I did third time. Then the fourth time I hear it, and my eyes go like this. I realize what it is. It sounded like a stomach growling.
Oh.
Yeah. And there's a window. I'm laying on my back, and there's a window right here, right up to my left. I'm gonna pick it up, and I reach over for the window, and the curtain. I wanted to get the bottom of the curtain and peel the curtain open, but I hit the middle of the curtain, and I was fumbling with it, and my fingers hit the windowsill and everything like that. And so after a couple of seconds, I pull this thing over, and what's behind the window, or what's there at the window, is black. There's just total black. After a couple of seconds, something moves out from in front of it.
Wow.
And I can see stars, and I can see, the trees that were there. They're out laid against the starry sky and everything. I was like, something just moved out of there. And this is a camper. This is like a fifth wheel camper. And so it sits up high. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. And I sit up, and I look down the middle aisle, because everything, there's one place to walk down the middle, and everything's set on either side. And there's windows at the front of this trailer about 25 feet away, and they're the ones they had the covers that come down on it. Well, the covers were up, and there was a gap at the bottom of the window about that much. And I look, and I see this shape pass between the trailer and the truck that's parked in front of it. And at that point, I'm looking this way, and I go,
wow.
Exactly. And immediately the adrenaline starts pumping, my brain gets fired up, and I'm thinking, go. And I'm thinking, no, I'm in my pajamas, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in a place I don't know well, and I'm not going to go running through the woods after this thing. Especially when there's multiple individuals that they know of that are on that property.
Yeah.
I would have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Again, my past experience tells me, you know,
Patience.
stay in your lane, do what you do. Immediately I start pacing up and down that aisle and everything like that. And I go into my briefcase and I pull out a yellow pad and I sit down and I just start to write it all out verbatim. And just that little bit I told you turned into about 6,000 words that I was able to put there, because when I work with witnesses that are trying to process their experience and go through these traumatic effects, one of the things I have them do is sit down and write it all out, whether by hand or on computer or whatever. And I tell them every detail you can remember, whether you think it's relevant or not, put it in there. You know, you have to do it, because even just noticing irrelevant details tells me the state that they're in, the state of alert and readiness that they've been put into. So it's amazing that it was almost 6,000 words, and doing that. And then I get first light and I'm watching into the house to make sure that they're going, because I'm not going to go beat on the door and say, hey, guess what? You know, your neighbor showed up or something like that. When I saw the lights go on in the house, which is about 5:30, I went up there and rapped on the door and said, you might want to come out here. And I explained to them
Wow.
what was going on. But it was sitting in the driveway. Their driveway was not paved, but it had been used so much it was just beaten down flat. I mean, there was no footprints, there's nowhere we could see it. And then we traced it, you know, its path back through the gap between the trailer and the camper and the truck. And that took it around the front of the house. And so we walked out into the yard and started looking at it. There was a tree it might have had to go past or something like that, seeing if it brushed up against anything, you know, maybe leave a hair sample or something. And we get to the far side of the yard and we check everything. And I turn around and I look back, and you know how you can see when something has walked through the grass, the place where they've walked, it gets shiny with we could see clearly that something had walked through there. That
Wow.
grass was beaten down that way. And the way his property is aligned is that there's a 40-acre strip, and then there's another 40-acre strip that sits right next to it. His house and everything like that is on one strip, and then the other strip is where most of their activity is. So we had to go out onto the main road, out of the yard, and then go to the entrance on the other 40. And we go walking down this road, and there had been some rain the night before, and there were puddles, and it's a dirt road going back, and there are puddles in the road. And we're hoping, because one side is swamp and the other side is dense, you know, woods. And we're hoping that, I mean, that we know that they use this road to get up and down. We're hoping that it just stepped in one of these puddles, because if it stepped in the puddle, yeah, it gets messed up. But when everything settles, you can see what stepped there in a puddle like that. So and we were about a half mile back down this road and looking through these puddles. And I stopped for a second and I went, Craig, listen to that. And he said, I don't hear anything. I said, right. I said, you're hearing nothing. There should have been bugs. There should have been birds. There should have been all kinds of activity at that point in the morning. Nothing. It was like standing in a vacuum. And I looked at him and I said, are you feeling what I'm feeling? And he said, yeah, because we're standing there, you know, and we didn't bother to bring a weapon. He never brought a weapon out on his property with him. But we didn't feel really good. And it was at that point finally I listened to my experience and I listened to what I said. I said, you know what? I said, I think we're walking into a situation we don't want to be in at this point. And, you know, at that point, I had a ball cap on. I just tipped my hat and we walked back down the road and got out of there. And it was, just an extraordinary thing, and if it had happened the previous night, what a conference that would have been to speak at, right? But
Yeah.
it was a great experience. So this year, and unfortunately, my friend Craig, he contracted cancer of his throat, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And but the committee that runs that convention invited me back this year. And that's part of the reason. I mean, they talked to me last year, and that's part of the reason why I started to write the book that I'm doing, and to be able to chronicle this work and this research that I've done, in the hopes that I can reach people that are suffering. and going through
Wow.
that. And my relationship with him, and his wife and the people that are up there, great guy up there who runs a lot of research up there by the name of Barnaby Jones. He does a fantastic job up there. Works with the committee to set it all up, and I get to go back up there this year, and I get to actually have a table to sit there and actually have something for people to look at, for once, other than just looking for a conversation. And but it's that's going to be June 1st of this year, and it's going to be a fantastic experience to be up there for the third time.
Wow.
They're just amazing folks up there. Just the friendliest people I think I've ever been around. I mean, it's small town America, and it's great. It's a great place to be because it reminds me, my hometown in Ohio is 300 people, and it reminds me of uh, time in that area and everything like that. And I'm going to have just such a great time to be up there and see everybody again, and be able to again report on where I am with my research and how it's progressed, and to think that it's been 7 years. From when this started. I mean, 7 years ago, I wasn't even considering anything like that. I wasn't considering writing a book. I wasn't considering speaking at these conventions. And it's all because of my friend Craig, who just he basically talked me into it, and I've been full speed ahead ever since.
Um, off topic for a minute. I am working on a project where it's called The Friends We Meet Along the Way. It's going to be a show. You are more than welcome to jump on, and I'm just going to share people, and you don't have to. I'm not putting you on the spot,
Hmm.
but it's for those memories. And some people are still alive, but still want to, say, hey, you really helped me in the field. This is the friend I met along the way. But you are so welcome um, to come on and just pay tribute to him if you would like to. You don't have to
That
give me an answer.
that would be my privilege. I thank you for that. I'd be happy to do it.
Thank you for that. That was my privilege, and I think that he's really made an impact on you.
He did. Craig. He was my friend. He was one of the few people that was interested in what I knew and interested in what I had found out. And in turn, it made me so interested in what he was doing and what the situation that he had. That property up there is basically um, it's basically a living laboratory for anybody that really wants to study this subject. And there's some folks up there doing some work, and I know they're doing it smartly. And it's great that his legacy is being carried on. And just not to let a cat out of the bag or anything, but I've got a surprise for everybody up there when I get there. There's an announcement that I'm going to have to make, and I'm going to detail it for everybody. But it stems from a lot of the conversations and a lot of the exchanges that Craig and I had about this subject, and it's going to be all for him too.
That is incredible. And I'm gonna tell you something. They may not still be around, but they're around in everything you do, and they're with you in everything you do. And sometimes you kind of almost still hear that voice in the background saying, go that way, or good job, or that was a good catch. They're
Yeah.
still around.
Well, the reason that I pursue my passion in the way that I do now is because of what he woke up in me. He told me I had more to offer than just doing this for my own benefit, and that's that's what I carry on. That's really what led me to want to write this book and get people aware of what's going on. And part of the book is about helping researchers get more information than they ordinarily would from the witnesses that they talk to, and it does it in such a way that supports the witness rather than just gleaning information.
You know what? I think that's really important because, and I'm gonna be blunt, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that call themselves experts, and they could give a flip about a witness.
Hmm.
They see dollar signs and a way to share their story or throw a show up or whatever. And I mean, that's not for everyone. There's really good people, but that's thank you for what you do.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And you talk about that, and in the book I talk about some of my earlier experiences talking to researchers and going on podcasts and stuff like that, and um, and it's a natural tendency for researchers to go to a witness and say, okay, what happened? Where did this happen? What did it look like? What color was it? Did it smell? Did it say anything? Did it make any noise? And sit there and talk about this creature. And meanwhile, here's this witness who's sitting there who has been heavily impacted by this situation. Number one, they're happy to find anybody to talk to about it. And number two, they're talking to somebody that they perceive knows a lot more about it than they do. So it's an exciting opportunity there. And then they get done and they say, okay, hey, thanks, thanks for taking the time. Bye. And click, and
That's
they're
it.
off. And you feel like, a dish rag that's just been wrung out. And it's not that they're bad people or anything like that. It's just that's the natural tendency. They go on, they're trying to find out more about this subject and trying to get more information about it. And they go and they find somebody who's had an experience and they ask them about it. And it's it's something that they just don't understand that they're doing. I did that for a while when I started interviewing witnesses myself. I didn't know anything. I mean, I did 10 years in the radio business. I interviewed music stars and sports stars and all kinds of people. And I did the same thing. I just talk about them, talk about their career and what they're doing. Boom, 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 done. And so that's the way I interviewed Bigfoot witnesses. And then when I started to make the connection about in 2015, I started to make the connection that, wow, these witnesses are really shaken up the same way the people I'm working with in the mental behavioral health field. And I realized I was talking to them in two very different ways. The people I was working with on an everyday basis in the mental behavioral health field, I walked in and I was very concerned about their state of mind, about their emotions at the time, about how they were feeling. And you don't talk with somebody about an incident lightly because that could re-trigger all kinds of things for them. And you got to be very careful and very respectful of their situation while they're doing it. But when it came to talking to Bigfoot witnesses, I was doing just like everybody else did. Sit there, oh, what color was it? How big was it? Tell me what it is, and I call that rushing the creature. If you just rush right at the creature, and that's what happens. And that witness feels hollow. It's a very hollow experience for them to go through that. And so what I started to do was talk to witnesses in a very different way, the same kind of way that I did in the mental behavioral health field. And my first questions how are you feeling? How are you doing with this? How is this, how have you been able to cope with this? And start with that. And you start talking about the witness themselves. You start talking to them about how they're feeling and the impact on them. And guess what happens in the course of doing that? Every last detail that you would have asked about the creature comes out. Every last one of them. And it's a conversation where that witness can release what they have.
So you
And
both benefit.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's the way it works. But if you take a comparison of the interviews that I had with people prior to being able to do this, the amount of data that I get reported back to me in writing, whatever, is double, even more so in some cases than I got before. Because when a person feels supported, when they feel safe, when they feel comfortable talking to who they're talking with, somebody who's really concerned about them and what they're going through, things are a lot freer. Things are a lot more open, and you get a lot more data back. In the book, I talk about a young lady that I talked to who was more than 30 years past her experience. She had an experience when she was little. And the thing about these memories that people have of these incidents is that the memories are crystal clear. They are the exact same thing every time. It's not like you can't remember what you had for dinner yesterday. This is a very major event in their lives, and they remember every minute detail about it. And this lady, just because of the approach that I had with her, It took her about a week to get back to me with a written description of what she went through back when she was 8 years old. And it turned out to be almost 12,000 words.
Wow.
If you think about
Wow.
12,000 words, what it takes to write all those things down, all
That's
that down.
emotion. That's
Oh yeah,
raw emotion.
absolutely. It's fear and anxiety and passion and everything that goes into it. And the description that I got there, I mean, it was a page turner, and it had to be because there were a lot of pages to it. And it was impressive that she was able, to maintain those memories for more than 30 years to go through that.
That's
And
called trauma.
one other incident in the book that I talk about is a gentleman who had an incident when he was a young man and then didn't tell anybody about it for 36 years. 36 years. This incident scared the daylights out of him, and it had effects like, um, he would not go back to that property. It was on a property of a friend of his that he went hunting and had the experience while he was out hunting. And he never went back to that property again. Whenever he was
Wow.
going to see that friend of his friend had to come to his house. And he didn't tell the friend why, but in fact, his friend never really even noticed it because, I'm not able to go or whatever. He would give that excuse. But for 36 years, that's how it worked. He That friend that his was lived on a road that was right on his way to work. He changed how he drove to work. He changed the route that he drove to work, added 20 minutes each way to go into work. He did that for over 20 years
One of
because
my
of his
best
experience.
one of my best friends did that.
Hmm. I mean,
He
it's
literally,
powerful. It's powerfully impactful that what these folks go through. And after 36 years, this fella saw one of my posts on on social media, and he contacts me, and I start to talk with him a little bit, and I get him to write down his description. And he that's when he really told me, he says, I've never really talked to anybody about this. Never have done it. And he's experiencing these kind of after effects, nightmares, night terrors, chronic headaches, anxiety bouts, all kinds of different things that he goes through because he'll hear something or see something or even smell something or see an article of clothing that looks like what he wore that day, and it'll trigger that experience again. And he goes back through all this stuff, and he goes and it's just that nightmare that he keeps going through all that time for 36 years. Okay, that's if you want the perspective on that, that's over 13,000 days. 13,000 days that he kept reliving this, kept feeling the effects of this. And it was the first time he told anybody. And what I did is that because he sent it, he did his on the computer, and I printed it out and I held it up in front of him like this. And I said, guess what? I said, it doesn't just exist in your mind anymore. It's out in the world. It's not just your burden anymore. You've unloaded that burden. And he hadn't really thought about it that way. I said, yes, you told somebody. It's out. It's not
and they
just in your
believed
head.
you.
Yeah, and it's
And
real. And it's an incredible experience to witness. In the mental behavioral health field, I called that the light bulb moment. The light bulb goes off over their heads, and they make a realization. They make an advance. And I mean, I'm not a therapist or a doctor or anything like that. I can only go by the experience that I had doing what I did in the mental behavioral health field. But I had therapeutic response based on everything that I did in that field, and that's just part of it. And that was the real that was the gas that I got out of it in doing that. And really, every time I saw that, I was good for another 10,000 miles. Yeah, let's work. And I worked with a lot of severe cases with kids and things like that. But I started having the same experiences, and I'm still having the same experiences working with Bigfoot witnesses who find all that stress and all that anxiety and all that fear and everything, all that emotion that's wrapped up in their experiences, and it gets released. And it's like, yeah, somebody knows, somebody's not calling you crazy, somebody's not, persecuting you. I had a couple people from that study that I did lose their jobs because they shared their stories at work.
uh,
I mean, it's just incredible you know, the responses of that. So when they find somebody, not only who's going to listen, but somebody who is very supportive in the way they approach this thing, and they, you don't have to sit there and tell them you believe them. You just have to sit there and listen and ask them how they're doing and how, they're handling their situation, and how it affects them. And it's a huge difference. It's an absolute huge difference. And I think from a human standpoint, we owe that to them, to be able to give them that support when we can. People like us who work with this and understand this, have experiences of our own. We know what it's like. And number two, from just a plain research standpoint, you're going to get a lot more data, and it's more reliable than cherry picking somebody's memory for certain things that you want, instead of getting their whole memory of the incident. And it's that's really basically what my book is about.
Rich, human kindness can go a long way. And
Indeed.
not enough in the world sometimes. So have you got a title for your book, or are you kind of going to keep that under wraps?
No, the title of the book is Footprints in the Mind, the Bigfoot Witness Experience. And that's really what it's like, because I'm thinking about it. I see, people when they go on these Bigfoot excursions, they look for footprints, for evidence, that they can find. And they don't realize that these witnesses have this experience within them. And the real footprints that these experiences leave are in your mind, and what you're thinking about. So it's called Footprints in the Mind, and it's coming out February 15th from Urban Press, or Urban Publishers. That'll be on, and hopefully there's stories in it about what people went through. One of my encounters is in there. You can get some more detail than what I related today. And it talks about different facets of the experience, the traumatic experience, or how all this works. And inevitably, you've probably talked to witnesses too, but inevitably I talk to people, and they'll look at me and go, "Am I crazy?" And I'll say, "No, you're not crazy. You experienced what you did, and just because somebody says, that I don't believe you, doesn't mean it didn't happen." And that's what the book's about.
I'm going to order a copy of that when it comes out, and I'm going to send it to you, and I expect you to sign it. Like I'm your best bud, like I'm your best buddy in the world. So if my mom comes over, she's going through my books. So I'm like, yeah. I would like to think that where I lack what you're strong in, that I can make up in my platform, the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show, to connect like-minded people that can complement each other in the field and do great things.
Absolutely.
Whether you're just coming through the door and you want to learn, or like Matt complimenting your research with his vocals. I hope that I can do that. Have a friend in Canada. He wants to start a Bigfoot camp. Well, I happen to have a friend in Pennsylvania that knows a little bit about that. So when you start connecting people, I hope that would be my strong point and what I can contribute. Because like I said, I go out for the experience. I go out for the friendship over the campfire. I go out for the friends I meet along the way. And to me, I've missed so much of that in my life being in law enforcement. I was a very closed, shut off person, very withdrawn, very raw, and like rough around the edges. I mean, I would soon punch you in the booger box and open the door for you. That's just where society got me at. And I'm kind of softened up, and I've been punched in the booger box quite a few times, so it went both ways. But that made me very raw. So at a later part of my life, I'm 52 now, I can go out and I can enjoy the friendships and the nights over the fire and the good food, looking up and taking the stars. My husband has an app on his phone where he could take a picture of the stars, and he'll sit there and tell me the constellations and the stories behind it. And I totally love that. And that's what I'm there for. So
Yeah.
hopefully I can get back, although not as great as you do, but in a similar way. Um, do want to go into the UFO. But one
Mhm.
thing, what about portals?
Well, you know what? When people ask me about that, the first thing I'll tell them is that I have no experience with that myself. Um, Never heard about it. Well, I mean, of course, I've heard about it. I've never ran across it myself or anything like that. And trust me, in 19 years of this, I've encountered some weird stuff, um, but that's not one of them. And the question that I often ask people about that experience is, they'll tell me that, oh, they're interdimensional. This portal, that makes them interdimensional. And I said, well, how do you know? How do you know that they're going to another dimension?
All right.
You know, yeah, you're assuming that they are because you can't see them anymore. Um, Now, from the course of my research, I can tell you that I think there's more to it than just the actual physical phenomenon. I think you have to look at the people. And in the course, if you're going to do any real Bigfoot research, um, the without a specimen on the table or a specimen in a cage somewhere, you're left to study the people. The people are the phenomenon, and that's part of what I do. But if you start to look at people, the witnesses themselves, they have the same vulnerabilities that everybody does. And simply because we have five senses that we think we perceive the world the way, we conceive the world completely, and we don't. There are ranges of the visual spectrum. There's more ranges of the visual spectrum that we can't see than we actually do see. There are audio ranges that we can hear and we can't hear. We can hear a lot, but there are ultra high frequency and ultra low frequencies that we can't hear. And it's those ultra low frequencies that I tend to focus on, and it's called infrasound. It's between 8 and 20 hertz, and we can hear down to about 20 hertz. And once they get below that, there's just as much sound, but we can't hear it. It's below our ability to detect. And infrasound has been found to have some incredible effects on people. Exposure to infrasound in laboratories has caused hallucination, confusion. It has caused changes in blood pressure. It's caused nausea, headaches, all kinds of things. It was one study that I read about it was that there was a bunch of people that they had a feeling of betrayal,
Wow.
simply because they're being bombarded with this infrasound. Even though you can't hear it, it still can be played at very heavy decibel levels. So just because it's beneath your range of being able to hear it, you can still be hit with concert levels of this sound. And what it does, it sends vibrations through your body, like any sound would. Our bodies are very good at dealing with sound, different, absorbing sound and being able to filter it out. These particular, frequencies of sound are a little heavier, a little different, and I mean, they can actually vibrate your organs inside of you. And there's infrasound is a very pervasive thing, and there's a limited amount of information you can find out about it, simply because a lot about the usage of infrasound is classified. And if it's classified, it's being used somewhere.
Mhm.
But it occurs naturally with animals, whales, elephants. They use it to communicate long distances. Um, we know tigers use infrasound to be able to kind of disorient their prey, make them easier to catch.
If
We
it's
know gorillas produce infrasound in their vocalizations. Whether they do it intentionally or not, we don't know. But studies are ongoing as far as that. Whether they know how to direct it or anything like that, who can say? But we know that infrasound is present in their vocalizations as well.
so if a tiger can do it, can a mountain lion do it?
Wouldn't surprise me. I don't think anybody studied it. but
Yeah.
it wouldn't shock me a bit. It wouldn't shock me if bears can produce the same thing. Um,
Well,
the
a
question,
wolf would
what does it do?
do like like the they make the R the you said it a while ago, the R sound, like the rolling R sound, where they're kind of
Hmm.
they do that as a form of communication to each other. But frequency also can heal sickness. So I mean, it's a powerful thing. And I
Well,
believe once I had it affect my heart when I was on my best friend's property. And we know she's got both a mountain lion, and we found a three-toed track on her property.
yeah, and
Um,
we're not talking about something that is a guess or an idea. We're talking about documented science with this. We know plants are affected by sound, different things that you do. We know, I mean, sound is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it's very pervasive in how it has its effects. And infrasound, you know, it's, I'm not saying that everybody who experiences these portals is under the effects of infrasound, but what I'm saying is it's a possibility that may happen. I mean, I spoke to a fellow, he told me this Bigfoot ducked behind a tree. There was a flash of light and it was gone. And I've experienced so many things in 19 years of doing this to where I'm not going to look at somebody and say, you're crazy. I'm going to look at that and go, what's the explanation? I'm not going to conclude. I'm not going to say, oh, it must have been a portal. I'm going to say, how did this happen? What happened here? It's the same with the presence of orbs. People say these balls of light are around the same time Bigfoot is. Are they controlling them? I don't know.
what
I
about
can't say.
cloaking?
Cloaking, again, I've heard the explanation that their hair is kind of clear. Their has it's their hair is kind of translucent, but that doesn't work for me because underneath there's a
Yeah,
creature.
flesh.
So if their hair is translucent, you just see a naked creature. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me how that works. And then they talk about, oh, it reflects and things like this. So okay, that's a possibility. You're at step one of the scientific method. You have an idea. Let's research it. Let's go get. Once you get through this research and you look at it, let's form a hypothesis that this is the way it works, and then let's test that hypothesis. Let's see how it actually works. Concoct something. Come up with something that simulates this and see how it works. Generate that data, and then let's see how let's analyze that data. Let's apply the scientific method to this. Let's have the discipline to stay in that lane and follow this through and do it. So I'm not going to tell them that it's not what it is. I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong. I'm going to say, let's find out. And that's how it needs to be.
So we've gone through portals, cloaking. Let's hit UFOs.
Okay.
What you got on them? Theory,
Well,
thought?
well, again, I haven't had, a whole lot of experience with that on a personal level. I can tell you that, I end up following all things paranormal because the work that I do with these traumatic after effects, I'm finding that more and more it crosses over into all of these areas of the paranormal spectrum. And there are people that have very real experiences, that have very real reactions to things that happen. Now, these things in the sky, I don't know what they are, and I'm going to guarantee that the vast majority of people that see them don't as well. But there's something there. There's something to it. Are they
Yeah.
aliens? I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's take a look at it. I have a good friend of mine here in New Mexico, Richard Smith, and you want to talk about some interesting reading that this gentleman has put out there. He's got 3 or 4 books that are out there, and he's an abductee. He even has a support group for abductees that are here. And as you know, New Mexico, there's a lot of UFO activity and things like that. And you want to talk about some interesting experiences? You could read his work. Richard Smith is his name, and it's incredible the kind of detail that he provides when it comes to these experiences of being abducted numerous times, and what he says has come out from all of that and everything like that. And I can't look at the guy for a moment and doubt anything that he says, because I've experienced my own weirdness. I've experienced my own paranormal things, but the bottom line is he's affected by it. There's a lot of other people that are affected by their experiences from various areas. I've talked to people that have believed they've seen ghosts, and they have the same type of responses to all this and everything like that. So I've actually come out and found that there is a mental behavioral health um, uh, condition that's come to this, and it's a stress response that's akin to these other stress responses like PTSD and everything else. And but what makes it different is, number one, the experience that creates it, which is something from the paranormal level, paranormal realm somewhere. And the second one is that in a typical stress response, a typical, condition like that, people really don't want to talk about their experience, because retelling is reliving. And you have a traumatic car accident, you have an experience like that. It's hard to talk about it. It really is hard to talk about it, because you got to go through it again in your mind, and it's a very upending experience in it all. However, you get somebody who's encountered a Bigfoot, encountered a dogman, seen a UFO, gone through all this, maybe experienced something crawling up their back in a haunted house somewhere. Their responses are the same as those people who had those other traumatic experiences. However, they really do want to tell somebody about it. They really do want to talk about it, but they're terrified. The only thing that scares them more than the experience they had is having to tell somebody, because they know what they're likely to get: the ridicule, the harassment, persecution, isolation, even abuse by some people that I've had reported to me for sharing their experiences. And so it's a totally different kind of mental health condition that I think, it should be examined by somebody more qualified than me to make an actual diagnosis. But what I've called it is paranormal encounter syndrome.
Wow.
It's the same type of thing that you go through from more commonly known or commonly accepted incidents, the same type of stress response that you go through, but with those two differences. Number one, what the incident was, and number two, the fact that you want to talk about it, but you're terrified to do so, and you're stuck in that place. And that's part of the book as well. Tell people about it, and to understand it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be there, because this is your experience and this is what you went through. I'm believe it or not, I'm not a touchy feely huggy kind of guy. I'm a tough love kind of person when it comes down to it. But I understand what these people are going through, and I understand that they'll be kept there or even be driven deeper by negative experiences about it. And the only way these people get healthy, the only way they get better, is to have the right approach and have the right state of mind to be able to do it. And if they understand where they are, with this kind of thing, that, okay, I'm not alone. Number one, I'm not alone because somebody's looked at this, somebody understands this. And number two, I can find people to be able to talk to about it and be able to get some support with this.
So, in closing, I'm pretty sure we have a lot more to cover. And so I think we've just touched the base of what you have to offer, the research world and the people that have the experiences. I can only say wow. Wow. So recap your book, when it's coming out, where they can find it at. And in closing, I want you to put out there anything that you feel like would be beneficial to the people that are out there watching a not so perfect Bigfoot show. And if you are looking for people to share their stories, please do give that information out or where they could find you.
Okay. Again, the book is called Footprints in the Mind, The
Mhm.
Bigfoot Witness Experience, and it's coming out on February 15th. It'll be available with Urban Publishers. Look them up online, and if I'll get you any contact information to be able to track the book down as soon as I have it. Um, and if you want to reach me, if you want to want to share your story, you want somebody who's actually going to listen to you and help you deal with the difficult parts of what you're dealing with. I have a Facebook page. It's actually called Paranormal Encounter Syndrome, and people can post on that, and or people can like the page or follow the page and get on there, and you can reach me through that as well. Also, I'm the only Richard Daniels that you'll find listed in Albuquerque, New Mexico on Facebook. So I answer direct messages all the time. People contact me quite a bit, and I'm more than happy to listen. I'm more than happy to offer what I know and what I found. And I don't guarantee, that there's a cure for anything. I don't guarantee that, I have all the answers. But one thing's for sure, you're not going to be alone. You're going to be able to, have somebody that's going to listen to you. And I think um, that's something we can all do is be good listeners and be good practitioners of this research in this field.
I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your kindness. And human kindness can be rare sometimes, especially in a world that's going through so much anger right now. So I know we're going to have you back because we have a lot to talk about. And I would just thank you for coming on the Not So Perfect Bigfoot show.
It is my pleasure. It has been my privilege to be here. And whenever you want to talk, just give me a call. I'll be happy to be on. And you find anybody that's having a hard time with this kind of thing, I'm more than happy to offer what I found and what I know.
I'm going to do that because we need more of that out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.